All right, I think we're recording. I've got a new DJI camera that I'm trying out, and I'm showing it on my phone. This is going to be some time for Texas flies. I'm going to Texas this weekend to fish with Captain Tyrannus Maximus. So I need to tie some flies. The first fly I'm going to tie is on a number 2 TMC hook, my favorite hooks. I found this hackle on the slide-in Kelly Gallup's fly shops. He's got the slide-in, but then he's got 2 fly shops. And that man really knows his feathers. He's a little AADD, but he does a great job picking out feathers. And I found this. Hopefully you can see this. Look at my phone. It's kind of a yellow olive. It's a really good looking color. Instead of just using regular olive for Seaducers or hackle flies, I'm going to try this yellow olive. All the videos I've seen of the fish in Texas, unlike the fish in New Orleans that will hit just about anything you put in front of them, especially if there's some purple and chartreuse on it or black, the fish in Texas seem to like a little more subtle colors, more natural colors. So we are going to tie a couple of Seaducers with this kind of light olive, yellow olive. There's no color. Is there any color? Okay. American Rooster Saddle Ginger dyed dark olive. So it's a ginger, which is a brown, but they've dyed the ginger a dark olive. It looks really good. It looks shrimpy and buggy and all that good edible stuff. So I got my number 2 hook here. I guess I should start some thread. I guess I'll use olive thread. I'm not going to show y'all me putting the thread on the bobbin. That's kind of boring. I do have a little bowl of water here. When I do the tail, I like to dunk the feathers in the water when I do the tail, so they're not going all over the place and I can kind of control them easier. So I'm going to start up at the head or the hook eye. Going to work my way back. Ow, I can never do that. I am going to put my scissors on my hand. You see how my scissors, I got that from Lefty Cray and Bob Clouser on their fly time videos. Just easier way to keep track of your scissors. So I'm going to get that undone. Cut that off. Hopefully this sounds okay. I've got one of these mounts that go around your neck, which puts the camera kind of close to your mouth and your nose. I don't know if you're going to hear a lot of me breathing and sniffing and hacking and coughing and all those other things. So I'm going to come in here. I'll grab a couple feathers. 3, 4, doesn't matter. The hackle fly, Seaducer, whichever you want to go by. You don't have to be very specific. You can use 1 big feather. You can use 10 little feathers. It does however you want to tie it. So I'm going to snip these off. Kind of long. I'm not going to tie it that long. I'm going to knock some of the fluff out just to keep it from making a mess. I'm a messy tire. I'm a messy cook and I'm a messy tire. I've come to that conclusion in life and I'm okay with that. It does not bother me whatsoever. Now I'm just kind of hand stacking the feathers, trying to get them lined up. You see they're kind of all over the place. So I'm going to tie this one with the feathers splayed out like a frog leg so they kick. So what I'm going to do now is, this thing makes a mess. You got little fluff and fuzz going everywhere. I'm going to dunk these in water. Especially that front end that has all the fluffers. Fluffers. All right. They're a little off. You see the length? I have them a little off. They're not matched up quite perfectly. And I'm going to lay that down. Sorry for the sniffles. All right, I'm going to come back. And usually you want some that go to the left and some that go to the right. And I took those kind of out of the middle. So I think I'm going to take the other ones. You know, when you take them out of the middle and they're straight, that's... If you don't want to have it like a frog kicking, if you just want to have a nice narrow fly, then if you take them out of the middle, they tend to stay together. If you take some that bend left and bend right and then tie them together, they kick more. So I really should have took some like from over here and then come over and take some from over here. That would be super kick. Oh, little feather. So I'm going to come back here in the middle again. Next time I'll do it right. I'm going to probably tie 2 of these in this color, but I'm probably going to mix up the second one. Those are pretty long, but I'm not going to keep them long. Nice thing about these, instead of the strung hackle, you got feathers of all length. Those are some pretty feathers. Look at the color on that, the variation in color. You know, things in the wild, fish, bait, critters, they don't necessarily have one consistent color. You know, they'll be brown, but there'll be specks of other colors in with the brown. You know, there'll be some tans, some blacks. There's just not one solid color usually. There's always exceptions. And it helps with the camouflaging of the animal. So they're either, you know, and then there's some animals that are really bright colored, especially the males, and that's to attract females and also probably to distract predators. You know, a lot of birds, the male's very brightly colored. The female sits on the eggs. The male's very brightly colored, and he can help distract predators and get the bright colors, get the attention of the females. So a little variation in the color does not hurt, in Jim's opinion. If you look at peacock herl, which I really like, there's several different colors in a peacock herl. There's some fluorescent green, some blacks, maybe a little hint of purple. That's a really good material. Peacock herl and marabou and rabbit strip, rabbit fur. Those materials are very special materials. Now you'll see these feathers are a little bit bigger than those feathers, but it does not matter because this is not a really specific fly. Now I took all the feathers and I got them wet and I'm stroking them together. See, that's going to be a lot easier to tie. And see all that mess up there? So that's a length. Make it about 2 lengths. So all that fluff and all that mess up there, I'm just going to cut that off. So there. And then I'm going to knock this out. Knock that fluff stuff out. There. I got a nice clean bunch. So now I'm going to take this. And you hear people talk about pinch wraps. I couldn't figure out what they were talking about for a long time. The way they pinch. They bring up and they pinch the thread. It is a little challenging to keep these feathers on top of the hook. That's why I put thread all the way down to make the hook not so slick. It is a challenge to get these feathers. This is the hardest part of this fly, is getting those feathers to stay on top of the hook. You come up and pinch that thread and then pull it down. I still don't have that. After all these years, I'm somewhat challenged. I don't think I have good finger dexterity like other people. So I sit here and fool around with it, try to pinch it and all that fancy fly tying stuff that all the great fly tiers talk about. I am not a great fly tire. I just fly ties to fish with. And you know what? An ugly fly will catch a fish just like a pretty fly. So don't worry when you first start tying. If your flies are ugly, it does not matter. They will catch fish. I think sometimes people attribute they give fish too much credit. I think sometimes if you get a redfish in shallow water, and I'm primarily going after redfish, sea trout, and flounder. But primary goal is to catch redfish on fly in Texas, which I have not done. I've done it everywhere else in the Gulf. You'll see I'm putting in a half hitch. Try to keep those feathers. Some people put a touch of glue back here. I'm not going to do that. I'm in a hurry. I'm doing this before work. Got up early. I got to tie some flies before work. I got to tie some flies after work because I've been lax. I should have done it last weekend, but I was lazy. Plus, I got my COVID and my flu shot last weekend, and I wasn't feeling very good. All right, we'll get that thread back short, come back up. So I've got a pretty good hump there. It'll be all right. So I'm going to put some copper flash in the tail after I drink some coffee. Copper. So I have a couple different coppers. I got this kind of reddish copper. I got this kind of copper. I got this kind of orange copper. I think I'm just going to use plain old copper. There's fancy names for all this, but it all looks kind of like variations of copper to me. Some of these almost look like the color of shrimp antennae, or shrimp antenna from my home state of Georgia. The shrimp have a brownish copper antenna. Sorry, hairball. All right. So I'm going to make it a little bit longer than the tail. I think that looks good. I don't think that's gold. See, here's gold. It's a little bit different color than gold. Not quite gold. But I think those colors look good. You don't have to put flash in the fly, in the tail. This is an optional step. So I've got that laid over. I like the length. I'm going to pull back the ones in the front. I'm going to wrap it all down. All right. So now I'm going to make this ramp a little bit smoother right here. Yeah, that's a pretty big knot of thread right there. I don't like the way that one's sticking out. I'm going to cut it off. Sorry. I know that blew out everyone's eardrum. I got the coughs. I'll try to edit that out. So now we're gonna palmer some feathers, some hackle around the front of the fly. Now, if you want, what you can do, you can also use marabou for a tail on these flies. Marabou makes a great tail, has great movement underwater, but you don't have to. So now I'm going to stroke that feather, kind of splay those barbs out. I'm going to cut the top of that off. Get that more flat. I'm going to tie that point in. I'm going to look at that. See how that bends? Yeah, that's going to... I'll be able to wrap that around. Let me get this out of the way. I don't need that right there. I am going to get another one of those feathers probably. I'm using a regular length hook, or a regular shank hook. So I don't think I'm going to need two feathers. You can use a longer shank hook if you want. And you can wrap multiple feathers around the shank. Palmer multiple feathers around the shank. And when you do that, it gives it more buoyancy. And also, it disturbs more water. Those little the little barbs on the feather kick the water. So I'm looking for a tool. This is not, tying flies before you go to work early in the morning when you get older, it's a little bit harder than doing it when you're awake. So now, got a pair of hackle pliers. One thing I like to do, a lot of people don't do this, because you really shouldn't have to do this, is when I spin or palmer, put a half hitch right here so the thread didn't come undone. A lot of people don't have to do that for some reason. My luck is never that good. Get my little back plate here, so yeah. So and this is where a vise that rotates, or a rotary vise, is nice. I'm going to take my hackle pliers. I'm going to attach them to the base of the feather. I'm going to stroke that feather so the barb will splay out. So don't pull on the feather too hard. They will break. Done that. And I'm going to spin the hackle around the hook. You don't have to have a true rotary vise, but having a vise that rotates is very nice. Now, if you don't have a vise that rotates, you put the thread to the side and you just rotate your hand around. You're bringing it around by hand. But you can see that having a vise that rotates makes this a lot easier. All right. So we got a fly. Get that out of the way. Come up, behind the fly twice, behind the feather twice, come in front of the feather twice. I'm going to come behind the feather one more time. All right, like I said, you got your scissors, and I'm going to come here. All right, take my hackle pliers off. Maybe I need some more coffee. All right, so that body is a little thin. Okay, pull that back a little bit. I'm gonna wrap this off. So that body is really kind of thin. So with just one hackle, it kind of thinned the body out. Could be the type of hackle I'm using. But you know, I could have tied two feathers in back here at the beginning. And then wrap one and then wrap another one. And then you're saying, well, Jim, if you don't like the body, are you going to undo the thread, back the hackle off, and redo the whole thing? And I don't think I'm going to do that. What I think I'm going to do, if I can do it, I could do that. I could just untie it, pull the hackle off, put a new hackle on. But I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to cheat. There's another color that I got from Kelly Gallup's shop. And this is Whiting American Rooster Saddle Natural Variants Honey. And I think that's just a really good looking feather. Hopefully y'all can see that. That is a good looking feather. I'm going to try to mix it up a little bit. I should have done this at the beginning. I didn't think the body was going to turn out that thin. So I'm going to come in here. I think I'm going to look for a little bit thicker feather. A little wider feather. Yeah, let's try this one. I'm going to do that. Going to cut it off at the tip. Going to stroke it forward. And like I said, this fly does not have to be perfect. I could fish it just like that and it would sink more because the feathers are not that, it's not that thick of a body. It would sink faster and it would not kick and put out as much water. And you know what? After a few fish, if you catch one toothy fish on a Seaducer, here's the only downside to a Seaducer. or a hackle fly. If you catch one toothy fish on this, a Spanish mackerel, a bluefish, a northern pike, a chain pickerel, a big flounder. If you catch one toothy fish on this fly, there's not going to be hackle left. So you got to kind of be careful what you throw it at. It works real good on tarpon. It works really well on largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, redfish. It's okay on sea trout. It lasts kind of. You notice I'm rocking this to try to work that feather through the other feather. So I'm rocking this back and forth. Yeah, that's got a little more body to it. So there are some fish. This thing works really well on largemouth bass and smallmouth bass because they don't have teeth. And it suspends, and it's wiggly. And it's just a really good fly. And it works well on redfish and sea trout. But I don't know if I can edit all that out or not. I don't know why I'm so coffee and sinusy today. Alright, so I've got that. I've got that taken care of. But any toothy fish that gets a hold of that, they will strip the hackle right off. And then you go, well, it's a one fish fly. Like I said, I prefer to throw this at fish without teeth. Now I'm going to put a little whip finish on it. Then I'm going to clean up all that mess. There, that was a good whip finish. But my favorite fish, wow, man, I'm just all kinds of nasally. My favorite fish to throw this at is a largemouth bass. It suspends. These legs kick. You got movement back here with the legs. This hackle palmered around the hook shank actually send out percussion waves, or send out waves, or send out vibrations through the water, whatever you want to call them. I don't care. But it creates noise underwater. And this is one of the uglier Seaducers I've tied, and I don't care because guess what? I can take this ugly fly out and catch fish on it, and they do not care. If fish are in a feeding mood, they do not care. Now, the one thing I've learned, and I'm just getting some of this hackle out. I think for freshwater trout, you'll see really good tires, which I'm not a really good tire. You see guys who tie freshwater trout flies. I mean, some of their realistic flies are amazingly realistic. And you know, trout don't really, a rainbow trout, brook trout, brown trout in a stream, when they get into a preferred feeding lane, a preferred feeding lie, they don't move a whole lot. They sit there and wait for food to get washed by them, so they get to see a lot of different food items during the course of a day. And they just sit there and watch it, and then they go up and grab one. I've seen some underwater stuff about trout on different shows. So I think, really, if you're a better fly tire, I think that's more helpful with trout. But I think, especially in saltwater, fish move a fair amount. They say that juvenile redfish don't move more than 3 miles from where they floated in as larvae. So when they're larvae, wherever they kind of land, they stay there within a 3-mile range, so they get big enough to move offshore to spawn. And that's why juvenile redfish can be overfished so easily, because they don't have a large territory. So you wipe out all the juveniles in an area, you're not going to have any redfish there till some more redfish larvae float in and grow up. Sea trout move more. Heck, I think flounder move more, because flounder will go offshore in the colder months, or go out to deep water in the colder months, then move back inshore in the warmer months. So I think flounder move more than redfish. So redfish and saltwater fish, they got to grab it. If it swims, if they see it and it looks edible, they're going to grab it. And I'll tell you, there's my little ugly Seaducer. Put a little more body on it. And what I'll do on my next one is I'll tie 2 flies. I'll tie 2 hackle in, and then palmer both the hackle in to get the body nice and thick. I don't want a thin body on these. And you can put little bead chain eyes on these if you want. This hook is a fairly thick hook. It's fairly heavy, so I'm not going to have to do that. But there is an ugly fly tied before I go to work. I don't even know what time it is. I got to check the time. I might have to go to work here in a minute. I'm going to tie a couple of these with these colors that I think are really pretty. And then I'm going to tie a red and white one. And I'm going to tie a black and purple one. And then I'm going to tie some clousers. And now I'm going to... You could fish that just like that with no glue on the head. And I know people who do that. Where's my loon? But I am going to take some loon. And I'm going to seal up this head with a little loon and my UV light. And you can use Sally Henson's Hard as Nail. You can use Zap-A-Gap. You can use anything you want to protect those threads. But like I said, the one thing about this fly, if you do get a critter with teeth, it's not gonna make it. Well, where's my UV light? Here it is. All right, gonna hit that like that. No one look. And I'm just hitting this thing all the way around. Like I said, this is ugly. And I don't care because it will catch fish. If I catch a couple sea trout on it, they'll take that hackle right off. If I catch some big sea trout with big teeth, or if I catch a big flounder with big teeth, you can catch a couple redfish on it. You can catch a bunch of bass on it. And I have one little purple and black Seaducer hackle fly. It is the god-awful looking thing, and I have caught more fish on that thing, and it looks god-awful. The hackles in the back aren't matched. I think I have it out. Let me see if I have it out. Sorry for all the dizziness. Close your eyes. All right, I'm back. So, that was quite the ride. I'm sure everybody got dizzy. So you see this ugly... I mean, this is just awful looking. I don't know what I was doing when I tied this, but it's on a small hook, longer shank. It's got black, the tail is black saddle. And then I palmered a purple and black, I palmered. And I don't think I had the purple feathers I wanted. So I ended up with real long body. And let me tell you, this ugly fly I've had for years. You can see how pitiful that thing looks. I have caught largemouth bass on this. I've caught baby tarpon on it. And I'm not talking about one or two. I'm talking about, I've caught dozens of largemouth bass on this fly. And you see the threads getting all chewed up. Some of the hackles are all crazy. And I have caught, and you see the hackles in the back, the lengths aren't matched. And I got a little bit of peacock flash there, which has been eaten off, broken off. But you see the hackles in the front? I have caught dozens of largemouth bass on this, and I've caught a dozen baby tarpon on it. And the thread, they've chewed through the head cement. That was all head cement right there, and they've chewed through that, and now the threads are coming apart. I don't even know if I'm going to use this thing anymore, but I keep it, and it almost doesn't, it swims a little cockeyed too, because the feathers in the back are off. So when it swims a little cockeyed. It's not a pure straight swimming. And the first time I saw it swim, I was like, oh my God, that'll never work. And then I started catching bass on it in a pond by the house I used to live in. And then I took it down to Central Florida, and I caught baby tarpon on it. You can see the feathers are all jacked up here. And caught a bunch of baby tarpon on it. And I had to resharpen the hook many times because the tarpon will dull up a hook. But between the movement being kind of erratic, not a nice, pretty swimming straightforward, but I'd strip it and and it never rolled. But you'd strip it instead of being a perfect strip, it would cock a little bit like that and then like that. I don't know what it was, but this little fly has caught a bunch of fish, and it is it's just ugly. It's almost embarrassing. But I've caught a bunch of fish on it. They've torn up the feathers and torn up the glue and torn up the thread. So don't think because you haven't tied the perfect fly that it won't catch fish. Sometimes I think flies that are a little beat up catch more fish because a predator, whether it's a land predator or a water predator, they would rather eat something injured than something that's perfectly healthy, right? There's less risk to them to eat something that's been injured versus something that's perfectly healthy. So I think when you have a fly that's chewed up a little bit, it looks like it's injured more than a perfectly healthy fly, and they want to jump on it. So that's my first fly I'm going to tie for my trip to Texas. Hopefully, I'm sorry about all the coughing. I don't know if I'm going to have a chance to edit this or not. See, I can see my camera on my phone. Technology, right? I don't know if I have a chance to edit out my coughs. I apologize. My little getting that other fly off the Amois, that little crazy little trip ride we went for. Sorry about that. Like I told you before, I am not a professional YouTuber. So I'm going to tie some more flies and put some more videos out. So talk to you soon. Sharpen your hooks.